Jamie, what's going on?
We're going to initiate emergency protocol now!
Emergency protocol initiated.
There's nothing to worry about! Everything's all right!
Yes, just as Dr. Hammond said, I'm sure our handlers will have everything under control shortly. Everyone, please stay back.
Falcon 18, keep your sight on the target. Wait for a clear path to drop.
Tell your men to back off!
You got Dern. Area 7, Joffrey, RV, and Oakland are preparing to eliminate targets.
Done.
Wasn't that exhilarating?
Oh, yeah!
As you see, we've spared no expense. Now, I hope I get to meet each one of you personally, but I want to say something now. Welcome to Jurassic Park! Mr. MC, as you were.
Bye, John!
Thank you, Dr. Hammond. That was all very reassuring. Hello, everyone. My name is Chris. I'm a paleontologist here at NGen, and I'm here to welcome you to the 25th anniversary celebration of Jurassic Park! This is really cool. 25 years, that's a long time. Talk about a blast from the past. And I don't mean dinosaur flatulence. Scientist, not a comedian. Okay, We have a lot to see and do tonight. Some of our partners are here with showcasing some of the toys and games that were inspired by the Jurassic Park franchise. Mattel is here with their line of toys, the Jurassic Park and Fallen Kingdom lines. We've got Ravensburger and Mondo here with their board games. We've got Zen Studios here with some pinball games. We also have a digital tent that has some video games. There is the Jurassic World Evolution, where you can create your own world. There is the Jurassic World Alive. It's an augmented reality mobile game where you can bring dinosaurs to life. Any gamers in the audience? Yeah. Me too. I love my video games. We also have, my favorite, Blue. You can interact with the dinosaur Blue in the new Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom VR experience by Oculus. I would make it to that tent as quickly as possible. The line got pretty long last night, so if that's the first thing you do, that might be a good choice. We also have a lot of photo opportunities tonight. The Jeep from Jurassic Park is here. We've got the gyrosphere. We've got our live specimen. Our velociraptors will be out at various points tonight for you to take photos with. We also have some very special guests with us tonight. They'll be walking around introducing themselves. I would like to introduce them right now. First and foremost, we have Dr. Wu.
Not anymore.
Working? Yeah. Hello guys, my name is Dr. Wu. I'm the Chief Geneticist here at InGen. First off, thank you guys so much for being here. It's so thrilling to be able to share our work with you guys tonight. After all the stuff down here, after the panel, back there we still have our awesome gallery to be able to show you guys what we do here. We have the incubator, we have a couple fossils. It's a lot of really exciting things, so make sure you go check us out, okay?
Big round of applause for Dr. Wu! Next up, Dr. Ian Malcolm.
Thank you. John, I just want to say that this park definitely has dinosaurs in the dinosaur park tonight. So, and I think the motto of the evening should definitely be life finds a way.
Big round of applause for Ian Malcolm. Next up, we have Mr. Dennis Nedry.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
And last but not least, our founder, you've met him once already, Dr. John Hammond! In our retail space, we do have Jurassic Park, the original version, available. Also, be on the lookout for the anniversary edition of Jurassic Park. It is Blu-ray and 4K. It will be released on May 22nd. Now, without any further hesitation, I would like to introduce our moderator for tonight's panel. I think he's overly qualified. He was the writer-director on Jurassic World. He was the executive producer and writer for Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom and writer-director for Jurassic World 3. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Colin Trevorrow! What's going on? So a couple things. One, like this party got really good last night. We had a minute where we had a bunch of inflatable T-Rexes that we had a live DJ. Yeah. Went off. Don't disappoint us tonight. I like that we have like a fan con with a bar. That's I think that's cool. Thanks for bringing bubbles.
Dino Conga!
I can't tell you how good this is going to be. I'm so excited. We've done a couple things. One, I know that you guys just went up and watched Jurassic Park. You saw the first 5 minutes. I've had the time of my life collaborating with Jay Bayona. He is brilliant. I think we have made a film that you all are going to love. I'm so excited for you to see all of it. But we are not here to talk about that. We're going to here to talk about Jurassic Park. Yay! I'm a deep fan of this. I love this. I love this movie. I saw this movie when I was 16 years old. And it was the first time that I'd like openly defied my parents. I snuck out of my house and I like put the pillows
I know you've done it. And I walked down to my friend, I was the projectionist at the movie theater, and he had to run it the night before. And so I got to sat in an empty movie theater all alone, and I watched this movie by myself as he ran it to the projector booth behind me. Yes, it changed the way that I looked at cinema. It changed the way that I looked at science, at paleontology, and our relationship with the Earth and with the planet, and so many of the ideas that we're working with now in the franchise. But all of the people who are going to sit here are legends to me, and I know they're legends to many of you, if not all of you. And I'm so excited to bring them out. The first one is one of the preeminent paleontologists in the world. He has been a consultant on this franchise from the very beginning, Jack Horner. Our next guest is somebody who I had the privilege of working with on Jurassic World. He has been involved with special effects and visual effects and creature modeling and animation from the very beginning. He worked on Star Wars, he worked on Willow, on Starship Troopers, on things that we all love, not to mention Jurassic. Phil Tippett. Next, we have one of the greatest producers of all time. He produced Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Bourne franchise, every Amblin movie that you love, Goonies, Back to the Future, and all of it. Jurassic Park. Frank Marshall is here.
Literal estamos a menos de un metro, a 2 metros de
Check it out. Laura Dern. All right. So last night, I had a bunch of questions, and I sort of set them aside, and we had a bit more of a conversation, and that's what I would like to do tonight. Let's the clever girl shirt. That's cool. Let's just talk about just from the very beginning. There was a moment in all of your lives when Steven Spielberg approached you and said, "Look, we're going to make this dinosaur movie." And as a paleontologist, when someone said, "We're going to make a movie where they bring back dinosaurs and they're here with us in the modern world," what was that conversation like?
They just called up one day and said, "Would you like to work on the movie?"
Yes.
Steven Spielberg. Yeah, I said yes. He wanted me to make sure that the dinosaurs were as accurate, could be as accurate as they could be based on the science we had at the time. And he asked me to work with Stan Winston and his group and ILM and Phil and see if we could make dinosaurs look real. And I don't know, we kind of did, I think.
Phil, do you have a mic? Hold on, man.
We have an extra one.
Let's make sure he's got you.
I have 3. What?
Well, look. When Steven said, "Look, we're gonna make dinosaurs," I know initially you were talking about doing them as go motion animated creatures, and maybe you could talk a little bit about the transition from.
Well, actually, the first call I got was from Kathy, who said, "We want to make this dinosaur movie, and we'll send you the galleys. But here's what we want to do: we want to shoot the dinosaurs practically as much as we can." Because Stephen had gone to Universal City or something and seen like a bunch of stuff that gave him the hope that maybe you could make a bunch of mechanical dinosaurs. And that was the path that Kathy was on. I was going, "Man, I don't think so." And, why not? It was like, well, I don't have a good answer for you, but it's kind of like, The same reason we can't have golf courses on the moon. It just, it doesn't, that can't happen right now. So it's going to have to be a mix of a bunch of conventional things. And one thing led to the next, and we were going to do everything very conventionally, with high-speed miniatures and, you know, the latest stop motion, go motion technology that we had. And then everything came unmoored and the digital revolution happened, and I was drug into the future screaming and yelling.
Do you remember that moment?
I do.
Okay, tell us.
I do, and when Phil's talking about the galleys are what they call the book before it's a book. And Michael Crichton had brought this book to us at Amblin, and Stephen loved it and said, let's go make this movie, and that's when Kathy then started bringing together the creative components to do that, and one of them was to call Phil and ILM and Stan and all the rest of us, and we started doing a budget and a schedule and starting to put this together.
Laura, when we were up, we're up here, we've been looking down at you guys, having fun down here, and we watched these Raptors come out, and when it happened, you had like an actual physical reaction where you're like, I can't deal with it. Like it felt too real for you. Do you remember when the very first time when you had to either pretend to be looking at a dinosaur or you really were staring one down? Like, what was that like?
Well, yes, I was in trauma just above this experience, and our friend said, you know, you can be with the raptors, like there's a virtual reality. I was like, I did the virtual reality. I don't need to have that experience. But I will never forget it, and I think it was extraordinary. As people ask always what this experience was like the first time we made the film, it felt like this pioneer indie movie, because we were all there and these brilliant inventors were coming up with something that had never been done before, some of which was right in front of us, thanks to Stan Winston, and some of it we had to imagine, and it was extraordinary. Sometimes we didn't know what we were doing. Not that an X on a piece of paper isn't terrifying. And sometimes there was a raptor chasing us. Or a tennis ball, yes, true. But it was extraordinary. It was, you know, one of the great memories of my life working on this.
Ours too. So let's talk about the animatronics for a second. That's a great thing to mention. And Stan Winston, an absolute legend, and I think that, you know, his animatronics, even though we had the privilege of using many more in Fallen Kingdom, which I love that we can do, those animatronics at that moment were something we had never seen before. We never could have imagined. So when you first saw those animals, I mean, you're someone who studied dinosaur bones your whole life. And when you actually got to stand in front of a T-Rex, how did that feel?
The T-Rex was incredible, and with the puppeteers all working it was scary. It was, you know, we all would like to bring dinosaurs back, and as far as I was concerned, in 1993, we did.
I want to stay with you for a second, because you say we always want to bring dinosaurs back. Just if I can go a little like paleontology nerd with you for a minute, you've been getting into basically reverse engineering of chicken and seeing how close we can get any kind of avian creature to what a raptor might have been. How's that going?
It's going pretty good. And almost scary good.
Yeah? You mentioned that, like...
How scary?
Yeah. We've got the capability now of making an animal, seriously taking a bird embryo and changing enough genes so that it has a velociraptor-like head with teeth, arms and hands instead of wings. We're missing the tail.
You're being like monitored, right? Like someone is checking up on you, right?
That's a good question.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Phil, like, what do you remember about just with the animatronics specifically, what do you remember about your experience and your interaction with them?
Well, Stephen and Kathy, I mean, we just kind of worked together as an improvisational troupe of like, what do we need to do to get this thing in shape? And we came up with this idea of what we need to do with the technology we've got right now, this create a Bible of behavior and movement. And even though we were using stop motion technology at the time, but got switched out to computer graphics, it was all just doing, kind of like doing sketches of like what it could be, what would the behavior be, what would it be like this, what do they like to run at like 5 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour, where does it break, where does it look good, just making aesthetic decisions and slowly pulling that into like this dinosaur Bible that would be the transitional kind of thing between what would become the computer graphics work and the Stan Winston work. And so then we were able to break it down between this is practical Stan, this is CG, blah, 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 blah. Just like old school, like King Kong. Just like it's how movies have been made for a long period of time. And then the great thing that they insisted on was once we had this stuff on film, that the most important thing about the dinosaurs to begin with in terms of their character were their voices. And so we took these Bible studies that we did, and I went up and worked with Gary Rydstrom at Lucasfilm for the sound designer for like a couple of weeks and ran these things, and Gary started, because we can't really start, you don't know the character without a voice, and you don't want to be animating things that go like and like have the sound designer go you really want to feel the nature of the character and the attack and decay and how air is moving out from the lungs, and the snap of the jaws closes it off. And so, that was kind of our guiding light in figuring out who these characters were.
And I'm going to stay with you for a second, just to talk about the Raptors specifically, like the Raptors in the Kitchen sequence, where you actually had John Rosengrant as a raptor in a costume. At that moment, this idea that dinosaurs were descended from birds was really introduced to the mainstream audience in Jurassic Park. It felt like a new idea at the time. How in tune with that were you when you were thinking about the motion of the raptors and how what animals were you comparing them to?
That was an old idea that other people came up with, 10 or 20 years earlier. But no, I think, and Jack can talk to this, a lot of the extrapolation that you do to try and determine what these things might be is you look at the paleontological record. A lot of it is like 90% of your work is done in the bones. It tells you what to do. You just kind of have to like wind it up like a toy and then extrapolate its water weight. How heavy is it? And is it like an elephant or a giraffe or an ostrich or whatever, and then just kind of do that. You guys do that, right?
Yeah, we do kind of do that, yeah.
So Frank, like so much, I've learned everything that I know about producing from Frank, and so much of producing is problem solving and trying to make sure that that the filmmakers have the freedom to be creative without worrying about all of the stuff that happens and goes wrong constantly that has to be handled. As one of the best of that in the game, what are some things that happen on this movie that you remember that just had to get handled?
Well, I think right from the start, everybody's trying to accomplish Steven's vision. And at the beginning, because it was pre the breakthrough in CG, Steven said, I want to build a T-Rex, a life-size T-Rex. And that's kind of where we started. And we all went, oh, yes, sir. And Stan Winston looked at us like, have you lost your mind? And he wanted it to run. That was the other thing. So, we of course charged forward and thought, well, we can do this, but everybody was working on the problem, and that created the breakthrough up at ILM, and that's where we then had to readjust the way we're going to make the movie and do this Bible that Phil was talking about, where Stephen went through, and he's a genius at this, where he said this shot is just the foot and this shot is just the mouth, and so we knew exactly what we had to create from the Bible, and that's how everybody worked together as a team to create the movie.
Did you feel that were there limitations at all that allowed the movie to be better? Because I know there's
absolutely. I mean, I always feel Stephen gets more creative when he's put in a box and told he can't do something, and he gets more creative. The best example is you all remember the swordsman in Raiders of the Lost Ark? That's a perfect example of that creativity coming from solving a problem.
Lauren, I would just love to hear a little bit about your experience with Stephen. One of the things I admire the most about him is that, for all of his visual brilliance, his storytelling, he also knows how to communicate with actors, especially with children, but can help you find a truth in an otherwise completely fantastical and sometimes even ridiculous situation. What was that experience like?
Well, it's pure magic. We know he's extraordinary, and it's one of the great experiences of my life. And while Phil and many other brilliant men were working on the sound design, and Stephen was plotting the imagery for the film, we also had to start shooting the movie. And I will never forget, on the first day, I believe it was day one, we were in Hawaii, and we're lined up hearing a sound for the first time as we see rustling in the cage right before this thrashed, I guess almost like a gurney comes up where they had lowered down this goat, wasn't it? Yeah, and it's exciting. This cow, goat, a coat.
I don't know.
But needless to say, we're there. It's so exciting. It's Stephen, this extraordinary cast. It's going to be inventive. We don't know what it'll look like when it all comes together. And we're all lined up. And on take one, we realize that we're all responding at different times to when we are supposed to hear the sound. So quickly, Richard Attenborough says, "Stephen, my dear boy, we need your help so that we're all aligned." And he's like, "Of course." I'm like, "Oh my God, Steven Spielberg, I'm acting and he's directing me. This is so amazing." So he's holding his megaphone, and they roll camera. And we're lined up. Richard's to my right, and Alan Grant, Sam Neill is there. And we look down and we're waiting for this moment to hear the first sound of the dinosaur that Phil's working on with a group of men somewhere else. And suddenly, in this moment, comes Stephen going, "Roar! Roar!" And Richard Attenborough looks at me and he goes, "Oh dear, do you think this will work?" It was like a moment of panic. But from that moment forward, magic did appear. And I have to say, speaking of the animatronics, on the day that I walk through this field and see that Triceratops, I genuinely started crying. It was one of the most beautiful creatures I've ever seen in my life. And watching the breath, its eyelids, its tongue, its mouth, I mean, the way it was moving and reacting was working with this extraordinary being. It was just mind-blowing. But day one was a little tricky. That was a little interesting.
I think an obvious question that I'm sure we asked all the time is, did you ever think that this movie was going to be, as big as it was? But I have a much more specific question for you as a character. Did you imagine when you were playing Ellie Sattler that character would go on to be one of the most iconic women in the history of film? And somebody the character is so important to so many. Did you have any idea?
Well, Stephen did say the first time we met to talk about it, It's like, this is a movie with dinosaurs. These things are going to happen. This is maybe different than a David Lynch movie, but I'm just going to say this. We are going to invent a feminist that no one will forget. And I was like, okay, that sounded amazing. And it's, you know, an incredible privilege, thanks to this gentleman here and all the others involved, to have been part of it and to watch how Ellie and these characters live on. Very exciting.
Question for you, sir. I think all of us in our different fields tend to learn through mistakes, through errors that happen, and then you find some kind of solution and it ended up being better than anything you could have imagined. In your line of work, when it comes to consulting, it doesn't, you know, you're science-based. There's not a lot of room for mistakes, and yet there were interpretations of what you felt dinosaurs should be, based on your understanding of them from digging them out of the ground with your bare hands. He actually mentioned, I said that we were going to be going to the Smithsonian to go deep in and look at all of the fossils and some that haven't even been identified yet. And he said, well, when you see the T-Rex, that one's mine. Which very few people can say. But I'm just really interested in hearing from you on you know, the difference between dinosaurs as you understand them and the dinosaurs as they were represented in the film.
Well, you know, first off, Stephen and I had a lot of conversations about what dinosaurs could do and what they couldn't do, and occasionally he took my advice. The cool thing about paleontology is all of the animals that I work on, including the Tyrannosaurus Rex, are dead. They're just skeletons. We don't really know that much about them. We do a lot of science and we guess a lot, but Stephen had a kind of a thing where he said, if you know for sure that something is wrong, I will fix it. But if you don't know for sure, if scientists don't really know, then I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make a good movie. And I thought that was pretty cool, actually, because I do the same thing in science, right?
Yeah, Jack actually busted me in front of Spielberg one day because I had done some tests where I was thinking, okay, well the Crichton thing, they steal frog DNA and whatever. And so I'm looking for an acting trope for the raptors. Well, you know, what would be really cool as a thing, as a feat, is to give them a lizard tongue that snakes out and test the air. And it's this is really a cool looking thing. And so I brought it in and Jack said, that would not happen. They are birds. They are not lizards. So I'm like, oh, come on, Jack. This is DNA sorcery bullshit. But Stephen was very adamant at saying, no, you know what, I really want this to be, I don't want to play, and you've got to get to this point with the director sooner than later, what are you doing? And it answered the question. It was I want these to be animals, not monsters, and I want them to be sanctioned by the paleontological community. That's what we're doing. It was I got it now. I think the tongues will be great, but
we filled in with something better, right? So what we filled in with was the raptors coming to the window and snorting and fogging up the window, which only a warm-blooded animal can do.
Didn't know that. And the tongue thing, I think, I can see his wheels turning already.
That's right. You know, I think, and Steve and I have talked about this a lot. It seems like the rule that we've ended up with on all of these movies is, at least for me, is I don't want the dinosaurs to do anything that another animal that currently exists couldn't or wouldn't do. And as long as we can keep it within the realm of living animals that we know, they're not dragons, they're not monsters. But you know, I feel that same amount of pressure in creating the balance between science and entertainment, and it's one of the weights that's kind of always been on the shoulders of this franchise that you have to think about all the time. Frank, I was mentioning mistakes, and I think some of the kinds of, not really errors, but unexpected things that happen on movies are weather, storms. I've heard a story from Kathy involving a whole plane coming in to take people off the island.
Yeah.
Tell me about all that.
Well, It's actually kind of wild. How about the volcanic eruption that's happening right now? It's part of our advertising campaign on Fallen Kingdom, just to get everybody's attention.
No one has been hurt.
Yeah, there you go. Evacuations have happened. It's all good. You know, it's kind of a famous story, Hurricane Iniki coming in. I do take a little credit for getting the crew off of the island, because before Kathy and I met, she was not a runner. And she began running because I was a runner, and she was in great shape. And once the hurricane hit, and there were trees and debris and everything over the roadways, and nobody could get to the airport, she ran 5 miles to the airport on Kauai, somehow commandeered a plane to take her to, well, she's a smooth talker. She got her way to Honolulu. She figured out what was needed back on the island and how to get a 727 back to the island, and they needed some supplies, mostly food. She talked to a guy from Safeway. She got some food on the plane. She jumped back on. They went back to Kauai. Everybody was lined up at the airport. They got on the plane, and suddenly she looked up in the cockpit, and guess who was flying the plane? Jock. Fred from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Jock, who was sitting fishing on the float plane at the beginning of the movie. He was a commercial pilot. He flew for Hawaiian Air, and then he realized what the crew was. And so, as they took off with the crew from Jurassic Park, said, "Hello, I'm Fred, your pilot." Da, 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 da.
And you know what? You know, because of what Kathy did, if she wanted to run for president, I would tell everybody to vote for her.
We're not doing that.
Big mistake.
You guys have enough franchises to deal with. No, it's amazing. Like the act of producing is something that's so vague to a lot of people. It's really hard to understand specifically what it is. And that story, it's not the only thing, but if you want to know what, you know, hardcore on the ground producing is, it's that you're FEMA. You know?
Well, and that's what happened, because when you're a movie crew, you're a little army, and you have everything. And so the crew, while Kathy was gone, was helping everybody on the island. They had chainsaws, they had trucks, they had tools, they had
alcohol,
the most important thing. And they were ready to go when she came back with the plane. But making a movie is problem solving.
To stay on the hurricane for a second, you know, tell me about the experience of the actors, because that's, you know, if you have given yourself to a character and you're that person, to suddenly realize, and you've been pretending to be in danger, to have to shift into being an actual danger. How did Stephen work with the children, especially, in handling, you know, that kind of intensity?
Well, it was incredible. We all actually ended up in a small conference room.
Yeah, like a ballroom.
Yeah, together, going through the experience, which was, you know, horrific. None of us will ever forget it.
The ceiling collapsed.
The ceiling collapsed, and we had to move to one corner of it. We were ultimately below sea level. We've all now processed, which was terrifying, and somehow got through it, thank God, obviously. I have to say my strongest memory, as an aside, which speaks to everything we all love about Stephen the filmmaker, is that we sort of got paired up at the end of the hurricane in order for everybody to kind of keep track of each other. And our crew was extraordinary. These guys went out with everything they had to help.
And generators. They had generators. Which were able to power the hotel.
Cutting down trees so people could get through, EMTs and everything. I mean, it was pretty amazing to watch everybody work together for the island of Kauai. And then that first night, we were paired up, and Stephen just because we had time to kill, and this just makes me so, I just love this so much. I guess was bored and can't stop directing. He had a flashlight, he had a little emergency kit, and he had a flashlight in it, and he goes, Laura, come here. And he puts me in front of the mirror of the bathroom in this tiny room with like one section of the hotel had been untouched. And he stands me in front of the mirror with the flashlight and he goes, okay. Love story, horror film. Love story, horror film. And starts lighting me. And he's like, okay, say this line. And I'll be like, yes, my dear. And he's lighting me as though, then he gives me a scenario and he's like, okay, the dinosaur's coming. I was like, oh my God, you cannot stop directing, even in the middle of an emergency. I thought it was the most amazing thing ever. But he was always at play and always an inventor, and I think somehow that kept such calm for everybody. And as well, he was, I think, the last voice on the radio, remember that? To Los Angeles. They had NPR or something. Do you remember? And he was on the radio, and then they cut out, and everybody didn't know what had happened. And it was quite terrifying, but we were incredibly bonded. It was an amazing experience to go through something like that.
He would send guys out, the doors of the hotel.
Into the storm.
In the storm, and some of the shots are in the movie, right? Of the breakwater and all that stuff, and there would be like, it was like a fucking hurricane. And there would be these giant pieces of aluminum that were like razor blades, 4x8 sheets going blah, 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 through the air, and they would be out there like grabbing stuff.
No, and it was the day before they would finish. There was one day left, and they didn't make it. They had to come back to finish. Pretty amazing.
It's incredible. So like, you go through all of this, and, going through any movie, like it is an ordeal. You're pushing a giant boulder up a hill, and yet you get to the end of it, and now here we are 25 years later, and you're looking out at all of these people who genuinely love this thing that you all created over the course of that experience. What is it that made this movie, beyond most all other movies ever, create this kind of love?
I don't know. We have to ask them.
Dinosaurs!
Yeah, it's the dinosaurs, because they were with us at some point, I think. That's what makes it different. It's science fact fiction that we're creating now. But you know that guy was here one day. And that's, I think, what, and there's the science of it in the paleontology that we all learned in school. And it's cool now, we get to see them actually tell the story.
And the magic of that experience, of us coming up to the crest in the Jeep, and just like you, the cast, we had a screening with Steven and Frank, to see what we were actually seeing there. And the first time, like you, that I saw what they had invented, we were all in tears. It's the most beautiful, extraordinary image I've seen in a movie. I was so moved by it. So it was such a blessing to be part of what everybody worked together to invent, because, as you all say, that's what we all were in love with.
We got really lucky, to have Steven there, but, when you've done enough of these things, you actually never really know until it's all glued together. And so Kathy invited me and Dennis Dern down, and I think it was like one of the answer prints at Amblin. And so it was just us in the screening room, and she ran the movie. And she goes like, what do you think? And I go, it's not terrible. And she goes, that's what I thought. And that's like the greatest thing you can feel as a filmmaker, when you realize that you've worked on something that didn't disappoint you. Or the other was actually special.
There's so many things that go into it, including the music. Without this theme, that's starting to drive me crazy here, but
you crazy, but yeah, so at that moment when you see it, now there's this theme that we all know in our sleep.
So it's all of these elements coming together, and you really don't know until they're all together.
I'm going to answer my question. For me, I feel like there's a humility that's in. I mean, there are other movies with dinosaurs in them, but to me, there's a humility in these movies of us in the shadow of these creatures that were here before us that are so magnificent and just remind us. We even have a line in one of our movies that remind us how small we are and how new we are. And I think that in all of the work that you did, that humility is infused into the film. We recognize that this story we're telling is bigger than us. And look, the legacy that all of you have left behind, I think, is evidenced here. It's evidenced in all of your kids who are going to watch this movie, who have seen some now for the first time. It's humbling for me to be up here with you. So thank you so much for coming and sharing all of this. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you again. That was fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, one more round of applause for these legends on the panel. And your moderator, Colin Trevorrow.